Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be going through. Sorry, it's so hot in this room. I've just come into this room to do something to film this, and I'm absolutely roasting. I've got my nice little handheld fan here. Um, that might actually be too loud for the video. I'm going to turn it off. Oh my god, I'm going to die. Today I'm going to be going through eyewitness testimony. A lot of research in this bullet point, quite a few theories actually. So again, quite a lot you do need to know for this one. I would say this is up there with one of the hardest bullet points in memory, definitely. But we are looking at eyewitness testimony and more specifically the factors that affect eyewitness testimony. So if we make a start on this, we are looking at defining what eyewitness testimony is. Most of you probably haven't been eyewitnesses. Most of you have probably not seen a crime whereby you've had to maybe identify somebody. But statistically in the class, I'm sure some people probably are going to have that happen to them in a couple of years, whether it's you are a victim of crime yourself. So good luck with that. And also, or maybe you have seen somebody be a victim of a crime. So, so before the 70s, you could literally, and I find this bizarre, you could literally convict someone based on the fact that somebody had seen them do it. So imagine you are completely innocent of any crime. You get arrested for something. The police pull you out, they arrest you, and you get taken to. God, look at the light shining off my head. You get taken to a police lineup, and then somebody comes in, the victim of the crime, and says, "Yeah, that was the person." They point to you. You are completely innocent of this. If that happens, despite the fact you are completely innocent, before the 70s, you're likely going to get sent down, all because somebody pointed at you and said they did it. So, what we're going to be going through is this idea about how eyewitness testimonies are actually very, very inaccurate and how they are not particularly reliable, and our memories can change and be altered by quite a few factors. So, there's quite a lot here. And I guess this is important because, as it says in the slide, jurors are usually quite persuaded by eyewitness testimony. I'll say that again just so it makes a bit of sense. Jurors are actually persuaded quite heavily if they see somebody say, "I saw them do it." Okay, so sorry, I'm just going to take my watch off because that's news is going to put me off. Before we go into that, I want us to just have a brief recap about what a schema is for good reason. So, a schema is a mental representation of something we understand in the world. And the reason why I'm going to say this is because your schemas are partly, I don't want to go into this too much, I'm probably going to cover this more in a lesson, but your schemas are partly responsible for you plugging the gap in your memories. I probably will come back to that. I probably will do this a bit more in class, but I do want to focus on what the actual theories we are looking at actually deal with. So there's three theories I need you to take away, and what these are basically looking at is these are factors that affect your eyewitness testimony. So, as it says here, one key factor in inaccurate eyewitness testimony is misleading information. And quite importantly, misleading information is split into two things. So, these are two things that change the memory. Basically, your memory is very malleable. And that is an important word there. There it is right there. Your memory is quite malleable in the sense of it is easily moldable by external forces, which is essentially what malleable means. So let's start with leading questions. A leading question is a type of question that an interviewer will ask somebody that kind of hints at a suggested answer, and is not necessarily the truth. So a good example of the typical example of a leading question in this example is a police officer asking someone, "Did you see the knife?" That's textbook leading question. It suggests that there was a knife present. Now, you may not have seen a knife. During this robbery, for example, you literally may have never seen a knife. They probably didn't even have a knife. But the second we hear a police officer say, did you see the knife? Our memory changes, and all of a sudden we're going, yeah. I think there was a like maybe like a 7-inch blade. There was a knife, yeah, absolutely. Even though there wasn't one. So a leading question can alter and make our memory quite malleable, moldable. Another one, which I'm going to go into in a bit more detail, is post-event discussion. You discuss after the event, hence post-event discussion. You discuss what happened with people, um, uh, you know, and they change your memory about it. There is another one, but I'm actually going to come back to that in a second. It's anxiety, basically. I want to go into these two in a bit more detail. So, leading questions, you do need to know about Loftus and Palmer's research. This is the key piece of research. Loftus and Palmer are not named in the spec, but you kind of need to know the whole study for Loftus and Palmer. It's one of those exceptions where it's not named in the spec, but you do need to know the whole study. So Loftus and Palmer asked people to estimate the speed of motor vehicles in by questionnaire. They watched several videos, and I'm going to go through this in a bit more detail. They watched several videos, so it's 45 American students in a lab, and they were put into one of 5 different conditions. So this is an independent measures design. They watched 7 films of traffic accidents of cars crashing into each other, and they ranged from 5 to 30 seconds. They've done this in a standardized order. Everybody did everything exactly the same, apart from one teeny tiny detail. One of the questions, so there were 10 questions they had to answer. One of the questions was about how fast were the cars going when they, and then there were five different verbs denoting the 5 different conditions. So one group heard how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. Another one, how fast were the cars going when they collided into each other. So this is a leading question. This Loftus and Palmer's leading question. If I were to say to you, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? You're going to see broken glass. You're going to see bending of metal, for example. You're going to see a violent impact. But if I ask you how fast were the cars going when they bumped into each other, that's going to change the memory. You're just going to see them just kind of bump into each other a little bit, not really, no broken glass, no shards of metal, and that's going to alter your answer. So a really, really important factor about Loftus and Palmer is that everybody did everything exactly the same, apart from one key verb. And that was enough to actually make the results very, very different. So in the smashed condition, the average estimate was 40.8%, 40.8 miles per hour. Whereas in the contacted condition, if you think about how fast were the planets going when they contacted each other, how fast were the fists going with the boxes when they contacted, how fast were the cars going when they contacted each other, that doesn't suggest any violent impact. So we're going to change our memory, and look, that is a whole 9 mile an hour less than 40.8. So you need to know there is a 9 mile an hour difference. You do need to know the other pieces of statistics, so 39.9, 34%, 38.1, so on and so forth. But if you want to know the main findings, the difference between the smashed condition and the contacted condition was exactly 9 miles an hour. So a couple of things you do need to know. I'm not necessarily going to go through these here. Always useful to know these though, right? Especially response bias factors. That's particularly useful, but we've got quite a lot to cover and I don't want this to go on for too long. So in terms of evaluating leading questions, this concept of leading questions that we talked about so far, Foster, the problem with Loftus and Palmer is they made them watch films in a lab. If you've ever seen an actual car crash before, it's actually quite emotive. It's actually quite emotional. You get a little bit of adrenaline, for example, and you're not even in the crash. But if you watch it on a screen, you get no emotions whatsoever. So the problem with Loftus and Palmer is that they used, it wasn't real crashes. They did it in a lab, and that probably is actually going to be quite important. Foster apparently found that eyewitness testimony was better for real life events and not for simulated events like watching videos, suggesting that the impact of leading questions does not have the same. So that's a big criticism of it. Yeah, not really bothered about that. Yeah, that's fine. And the other thing here is many, and we're going to see this actually in a second, but many pieces of research in this area tend to use, not always, but they tend to use unethical and distressing stimuli like car crashes, which is a bit contradictory to my initial point. I want to go into something else now. So leading questions is one factor. I'm going to take you, if you've watched some other videos before, I'm going to take you back to the wonderful world of Shirley. I'm going to go to Heysham Road in Southampton. And again, I will say this to my group, so apologies about it. It was about year 9. I was walking to school, and I would never forget this for as long as I live. Me and my mate were walking round. So basically, you walk up this pavement just here, and then you go round this little bit just here, and then you walk round here, and then you're going up towards Shirley High Street. We were walking down here, and we were probably, I'd say, we were maybe, I don't know, around about here. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, and I swear to God this happened, I doubt myself now, but me and my mate Tony were walking around about here, and a guy jumps over this fence here in nothing but his boxers, being chased by at least, in my memory, by at least 3 police officers. This is 8 o'clock in the morning, by the way. The guy being chased is in his boxers, pretty much almost naked. And what they do is they run like Benny Hill, 3 officers chasing the guy round the car, literally. Honestly, chasing him around the car. Why one didn't go the other way, I will never ever know. But they were literally chasing here. Me and my mate Tony are literally stood here like, what the freaking hell is happening here? What the hell are we watching? And we were just stood there, not really doing anything. Eventually, the guy figures he needs to run off, so he runs off down here, runs off and just sprints off down the road, tailed by the police officers, left by me and Anthony just stood there being like, what the hell have we just seen? We got to school and we started talking to our mates about this. And to be honest, we that morning we spoke to our mates so much all through the day, all walking back home, about what the hell we just saw. Like, what the hell was it? What do you think he did? I don't even know what's true anymore. Because the discussions I would have had, the post-event discussions I would have had with my mates, have changed my memory of it. And the memory I have in my head, I don't even know if that's what actually happened anymore. I swear it is what happened, but I'm not convinced that's what happened anymore. So post-event discussion occurs when individuals discuss events that they have witnessed with others, like half-naked men being chased by police officers. An example... Okay, right, that was... that's where I've that's kind of where that's inspired me to give that example. An example would be telling your friends about a mugging you saw on the way to college when you get to college. And the longer we discuss the event with our friends, the more it's more likely going to distort it. Now, it is based on 3 things, and you do need to know these 3 things. So if we see the event in the media or social media, right? So I don't know, like even like a big car crash, or if we see it basically in other, if we witness something and then we see it in the news later on, we experience retroactive interference. So this new information is affecting the way of our old information. This new information is changing our old information, and that's kind of retroactive interference. And this is particular with the media, by the way. So media often changes the way we think about things. Conformity often changes our memories as well. So, for example, with me watching that guy being chased by the police, I may have got to school and a lot of my friends may have been like, well, you know, maybe he was God knows, I don't know, like, they could have said anything. But because obviously I want to conform with my friends, I want to be, on a good level with my friends, I may change my memory more to what they are saying in order for me to not be disapproved of. And the other thing as well, and this is quite similar to what we've talked about so far. But if you are repeat interviewed, if you're, and this by the way, this does apply to just saying the same thing to loads of people. So I didn't just go to Gil, I didn't just go to Dan about this. We talked about it in every class of the day, and people were asking us questions like, "What the hell? What was happening?" If you are persistently questioned on what has happened, you are likely going to alter it. So this is all AO1 here, by the way, and you do need to know this. I'm not going to go through Gabbert, although Gabbert is research you do need to know. It's a really, really good piece of research. So for leading questions, you need Loftus and Palmer. For post-event discussion, you need Gabbert, and you do need to know, I'd say, pretty much the whole piece of research here. So again, you may want to pause this and make sure you've got particularly the stats down as well, and you actually understand the piece of research. I'm not going to go through this because I'm just going to end up reading this. But you also need to know research for anxiety. But in order to know research for anxiety, you also need to know, God, I'm so warm in this room. You know, you're probably going to be watching this in about winter, and at the moment, future Kieran, it's currently 31 degrees, and I think I am melting. And I just want to say to future Kieran, if you watch this back, the temperature can go above 10 degrees. It is possible, because I always struggle with that in the winter, believing that. Actually, do we have talk about memories, for example? Talk about memories. When I'm in winter, I actually genuinely doubt that the temperature ever gets to 30. And my memories kind of lie to me and say, no, I don't think it was 30. I think it was just an exaggeration, right? I'm sweating everywhere. Honestly, it's horrible. Now, one final factor. So the first two we've covered so far, I just wanted to make a note that leading questions and post-event discussion come under misleading information. Anxiety is the third factor, but it doesn't come underneath misleading information, and that's quite important to make sure you've got that down. Our level of anxiety when we witness something influences the chance that we are going to actually remember it. So what you have here is called, and I've got it on the next slide, I think, the Yerkes-Dodson inverted U hypothesis. This idea that if you have excessively high anxiety, your ability to recall is going to be poor. And I always think here about students who are excessively anxious going into the exams. These students are not going to remember that much. They're not going to recall that much because they're so anxious about it. If you have very, very low anxiety, if you have very low anxious arousal, and i.e. you're not really paying attention to what happened, you're probably not going to remember that much as well. So Yerkes and Dodson believe that you needed a what they called an optimal amount of anxiety. And I want to take you back. I'm going to take you back to Shirley. All my stories are in Shirley. I'm going to take you back to Shirley. Here we go. Because I want to take you to a very near where I live, there it is. I believe it's called Bourne Road. There we go, Bourne Road. So I used to live in Charlotte House. There you go, right there, from 2007. Good times. And once I was literally walking up this road just here, right? I was walking around about here, and it was about 8 o'clock at night. It was getting dark, and I walked past a guy, and as I walked past him, he looked at me, pulled open his jacket, and got a hammer out as he was about to walk by me. Now, this is 8 o'clock at night, and he just kind of looked at me, and he looked quite thuggish. And worryingly, I just put up no defense and thought, this is how I'm going to die. And I remember just being like, I've accepted my fate. He carried on walking by me. He walked down to the end of the road. There was a car parked here, and he basically got the hammer, smashed the window, pulled in, grabbed something, and ran off. Now, even though I looked him in the face, I would not have been able to identify him. One, because I was anxious about what I've just seen, but the second thing, because he had a weapon. What do you think my eyes were drawn to when he pulled out the hammer? Your eyes go to the threat. You don't you don't look at someone who's pointing a shotgun at you in the face. You look at the thing they're pointing at you, right? So it's an evolutionary thing. So we'll go through the weapons effect in a second, but the point I'm trying to get across here is that when he pulled out the weapon, or when he started smashing the car, high anxiety meant I would have been unable to ID him if I did go to the police, which I didn't, because I thought he's seen my face, he's seen where I'm walking from, he could kill me. So no thanks. So the Yerkes-Dodson, come on, the Yerkes-Dodson, oh my God, Jesus, hypothesis is quite linked to anxiety in this case. Now, you do need to know two pieces of research. I would know both Johnson and Scott and Ewell and Cutshall. Johnson and Scott is my particular favourite. I don't think I've got them on here. No, I don't. But both pieces of research can be found on this site just here. Again, I would know all those pieces of research. So you need to know Loftus and Palmer for leading questions. You need to know Gabbert 2003 for post-event discussion, and Johnson and Scott plus Ewell and Cutshall for anxiety as well. Johnson and Scott is one of my favourite studies. I love Johnson and Scott. I think it's brilliant. But they do show how anxiety actually plays quite a critical role in the recall of eyewitness testimony. So there's a couple of other things here. Yes, there are some, particularly for the A on the, I hate that term, but A star and A students, you do need to know maybe a couple of other pieces of research as well. So there's Loftus as well as the, there's quite a few Loftus pieces of research you may want to know. And then finally, the misinformation effect is also quite important to know. But that's more extension. So that pretty much is all the AO1. You need to know the three theories that I've covered, as well as the pieces of research for each. I do want to go through some evaluations, just very briefly. I need to strengthen the evaluations here, I think, but all of these tend to use lab-based research. Right? Why is this a weakness? You're going to see in a second. They do have a lot of supporting research, and that's quite important. Not that much refuting research, actually, but they do have a lot of supporting research. But Johnson and Scott, if you have to, for example, if you have to study anxiety and the ability to recall, you're going to have to make your participants anxious. And in the case of Johnson and Scott, it was by creating a fake argument and someone walking out with a letter opener covered in blood, or fake blood. That's going to cause some anxiety. So you can argue here that actually a lot of the pieces of research are based upon unethical procedures, and that may harm the reputation of psychology, because it might actually hamper people actually recruiting for psychology, because they think, no, because psychology scares the living crap out of you. So it's quite an important factor. And the other thing as well is the Devlin report. This is particularly important for Loftus and Palmer. I will probably forget to talk about this in the lesson. The Devlin report was created after Loftus and Palmer and recommended to, I think, the UK government that you should no longer be able to prosecute someone and convict someone solely on the basis of eyewitness testimony. You're going to need to know other pieces of research. You're going to need to have other pieces of evidence here. You're going to need to have something else to nail this person, DNA, for example, CCTV, some other form of admissible evidence. So this is actually quite good. You can no longer convict someone just because you went, I saw them do it. Right, you can't do that anymore after Loftus and Palmer, so it's had some pretty good effects upon society. So I have a just a standard point here, not the best point I've ever written before, but it is I'm hoping we're getting to the point now where we are standardizing and structuring our points quite well, and this is a model answer. Now, I do just want to actually talk very briefly. I don't talk usually too long about the exam questions. You need to answer two types of questions here. I want to see this type of question is quite common. A woman is being questioned by a police officer about a heated argument she witnessed on an evening out with friends. The argument took place in a bar and ended with a violent assault, and a knife was discovered later by police in the car park of the bar. Did you see the knife the attacker was holding? Asked the police officer. I'm not sure there was a knife. Yes, there probably was, replied the woman. I was so scared at the time that it's hard to remember, and my friends and I have talked about what happened so many times that I'm almost not sure what I did see. Read the question here. When it says discuss research, by research, the question means research and or theory. So not only do I want you to talk about Johnson and Scott, Ewell and Cutshall, Loftus and Palmer, Gabbert, for example, I also want you weaving that in with the theory that that piece of research is linked to, and that is quite skillful. So your AO1 here is going to be quite packed full of Johnson and Scott linking to anxiety, Loftus and Palmer linking to leading questions, Gabbert linking to post-event discussion, and then AO2 and then two AO3s for this question. So that is pretty much it. I would expect, by the way, that question in class. This is a very, very common question that I ask through the year, but hope that was useful. Quite a difficult bullet point, particularly not so much on the content, but particularly in these type of questions that are often asked. Peace out, and like and subscribe and stuff. Thanks.